Let's bring in our red and blue political panel. Zerlina Maxwell is a Democratic strategist and was director of progressive media for the Clinton campaign. She's here in New York. And Hogan Gidley is a Republican strategist and CBSN political contributor. He's with us from Columbia, South Carolina via Skype. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Let's start off with this New York Times reporting on Russia. And I'll start with you, Hogan, which is possible new evidence of collusion between Russia and the Trump campaign. Are there some limits to the White House strategy of essentially trashing reports like this as quote-unquote fake news?
Well, look, I mean, I think the Trump administration's vitriol toward the press has been evident from the get-go, even back during the campaign. They're going to continue to say things are fake, like this report, for example, until there's real evidence to show to the contrary. The Trump administration has been clear. Sean Spicer has been clear in all of his press briefings, pointing out that there was no conversations between anyone on the Trump campaign. People like Corey Lewandowski made the comment, there is no collusion, no conversations with Russia in the Trump campaign. So until there's something there, I think you're going to hear more of the criticisms from the Trump administration that this is more fake news from people like the New York Times.
Zerlina, what do you think?
I wish Hillary Clinton, was judged under those same rules, right? I mean, I think when you're talking about a double standard, this is an example that comes to mind, because it's not about whether there's there. We actually need to have an investigation to determine whether there's a there, and whether or not there were explicit communications between the Trump campaign and operatives in Russia, and in order to influence the outcome of the election. That is a critical component to this whole story, and something that we need to get to the bottom to, and we don't get to the bottom of it unless you actually do an investigation.
Yeah, Hogan, let me ask you a political question here. So you have the House Intelligence Committee, Hogan, investigating specifically now whether there was collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. What position do these kind of inquiries put top Republicans in on Capitol Hill as they work to reach out to President Trump over policy goals?
Well, I mean, it's a difficult situation if Republicans are ending up having to investigate a Republican president. But Congressman Nunes has been above board on all of this. He's been very clear. In fact, up a year ago, pointed out that the Russian hacks, the leaks going on, the conversations with Russia, that it was the biggest intelligence failure since 9/11, I believe he put it. And Republicans would be smart to understand that if there is something there, and if there is evidence that proves this, then we need to have that through an investigation. Of course, we need to have one. If there is that, then that's a conversation we need to have. But until then, it's just more noise, and it's just more things that take away from the Trump agenda, and that's what they're trying to avoid as an administration. You know, they've been criticized so much for going off on tangents that take them off a message and bringing up issues that prevent them from moving forward on the Trump agenda. Now they're actually focused on what they need to be focused on, which is governing, and these types of things are going to plague them until the investigation is complete and the facts come out.
And Zerlina, I mean, doesn't this in some sense kind of confirm the narrative for some people that, in fact, these are politically motivated attacks, that these leaks have been happening because of Obama administration holdovers who have made it their business to now try and bring down this president, or at least harm this president as he's in his first months in office? Doesn't this sort of confirm that narrative?
Not necessarily, because I think this is something that's really serious whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. The heart and integrity of our democracy is the ballot. People have died literally on bridges. Selma, the anniversary of the Bloody Sunday is coming up. You know, people died in order to be able to give all Americans the opportunity to access the ballot, and the integrity of that is at the core of our democracy. If we don't have an independent investigation, and this is another reason why I think any investigation needs to be handed off to a special prosecutor. You cannot let Jefferson Sessions, the Attorney General, investigate a campaign with which he was a very prominent surrogate.
Okay, and speaking of that, I was just handed, as you were talking, Zerlina, breaking news from the Washington Post, which is now reporting that Jeff Sessions spoke twice last year with the Russian ambassador, encounters that he did not disclose at his confirmation hearing to become Attorney General. Hogan, let me ask you, it seems now we are seeing, according to this report, more questions being raised, additional questions being raised now about someone who is now in the position to oversee investigations by the Justice Department here. What's your reaction to this news? I know it's obviously just happening. But back in his January confirmation hearing, then Senator Sessions said, quote, "I did not have communications with the Russians."
Right. Well, I mean, look, I haven't seen the report. Obviously, it was just handed to you, and it's breaking while we're on this telecast here. But look, if he answered that way and it's incorrect, then we obviously need to have a serious conversation about that, because lying before Congress is a serious issue. But I don't know what was said. I don't know what the conversations were about. I don't know if, in fact, he had the conversation. So far, these are just assertions. So I don't know. This is the type of stuff that swarms around an administration that takes them off message. They're finally on message, so I can understand folks on the left trying to knock them back off and have to fight these types of petty spats. But these are serious charges and serious allegations. It's not so much the questions that concern me. Ask all the questions you want. It's the answers. If the answers are in the affirmative, there's a problem. If they're not, then we can move on to something else.
I should go on to note that the Washington Post article goes on to say that a spokeswoman for Sessions said there was, quote, "absolutely nothing misleading about the answer that he gave back in that January confirmation hearing." Hogan, let me continue with you for just a moment here. Do you think, though, reports like this that are raising questions about communications possibly that may have happened will fuel calls for a special prosecutor to step in here? Because obviously, as I said, when in the Attorney General position, he is overseeing the very Justice Department that would be conducting this kind of investigation.
Sure, but I mean, this is what's going to happen now, from now until the end of Donald Trump's term as president. The left is going to try to attack him on every front. This story is not going away. As Republicans, when we were in control of the House and the Senate, as we still are, but when the Democrats had control of the White House with Barack Obama, we consistently went after him on things we thought were unethical, that were illegal. This is what happens. And now that Jeff Sessions is the head of justice, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. But these are the fights. These are the issues that, if they are just purely political, they'll die and wither on the vine, and they'll end up on some weird blog and some conspiracy theory report somewhere that don't amount to anything. But if there's something there, I want to know about it. Let's get it out and let's figure out how to move forward. But right now, all it is speculation, and all it's doing is trying to take the administration off its game.
So as I'm looking at this Washington Post article further, Zerlina, the spokeswoman who is quoted here is Sarah Isker Flores, who's actually been on this show. And the statement from her to the Washington Post is that he was asked during the hearing, his confirmation hearing, about communications between Russia and the Trump campaign, not about meetings he took as a senator and a member of the Armed Services Committee. So I guess the question is, at a time when we have seen questions continuing to be raised about Russia, and the White House continuing to paint these as politically motivated attacks, for Democrats here, what is the strategy then? Is it to just kind of continue to make these calls and raise these questions, even though obviously, as you heard from Hogan there, the argument is these are just politically motivated and nothing more?
You know, this is politics, so there's always going to be, something political about these conversations. But again, I think when you're talking about a foreign government interfering in our election, I can't think of anything else that's more important to me as an American citizen and as a voter, someone who cares about the future of our country, and making sure that kids have access to education. All of these things we all care about, but we don't get there unless we have free and fair elections, that we can trust that when we go in to cast our ballot, that is accurately counted, and that there isn't a foreign government that is hostile to our own currently interfering in that outcome. And certainly when you have certain data points and facts, when you're looking at, Hillary Clinton won 3 million more votes in the popular vote, that is something that, with all of these other details coming out as we go into the new year, that's what raises flags, right? It's not as if there isn't other things that have already come out that isn't related to Russia that lead us to believe that we need to know more about what really happened.
Hogan, you want to jump in?
Yeah, but what is the assertion there? You just said that he impacted, that Russia could have impacted the outcome of the election. In what way?
Because it was a hacking and propaganda campaign. So if somebody is hacking into John Podesta's personal email messages and then posting 10,000 emails literally every day the last 30 days of the election, that is going to influence people's beliefs about what Hillary Clinton stands for, what she's going to do for the country, and it feeds into an already built narrative that she was corrupt. So it was part of a propaganda campaign to feed into a narrative that had already been created.
I think there are a lot of open questions right now, Hogan, still, but what we do know, our Margaret Brennan over the White House is confirming a report that Trump White House has confirmed to CBS that the president's aides were told this week by White House counsel to preserve emails and other materials that could be connected to various probes regarding Russian interference. A White House official told her that this is, quote, simply taking proactive steps to push back against false and politically motivated attacks. So, Hogan, these developments are happening at a time when President Trump, as we just outlined and as we've been outlining all throughout the day, has been getting relatively high marks from people who watched his address on Tuesday, in which he wanted to focus on immigration, he wanted to focus on health care. He clearly wanted to strike a more unifying tone, and we didn't see a tweet barrage or anything else that might have perhaps gained some of the news spotlight. What does this news now do for a White House that seemed, you talked about a little bit off the top, but what does this do now for a White House that really was hoping to clearly focus attention on its agenda?
Well, news cycles rarely last more than a day anymore, so this isn't necessarily something that's going to take them off their game, and quite frankly, tomorrow it may be something else. This will be asked and answered, and we'll move on to something else. But you mentioned something at the top, which was that Donald Trump was able to deliver this speech that most everyone, Republicans and Democrats, basically graded as being very highly well-regarded, well-received, obviously well-delivered. And that was what he wanted to focus on today. He wanted to let that news permeate throughout America today, throughout the news cycle today. He did not step on it, as you mentioned, with tweets early this morning. He let this be the story. There was so much in that speech about what he wanted to do, and you touched on some of them, whether it be immigration reform, health care, building the wall, repealing, replacing Obamacare, as he put it, those types of things. This is just another issue that I believe we'll have to deal with, but I don't think it's going to snatch the spotlight unless there's some smoking gun there. Right now, after all the rhetoric soaring as it was leading up to the election and then afterwards, now we're focusing on governing. I think the American people are sick and tired of the nonsense. They want someone to step up there and get things accomplished. And remember, this whole movement is based on results. If there are no results, there is a likely chance that Donald Trump will not be reelected. But if these results begin to happen, these other ancillary issues, if there is nothing there, will not impact the news cycle whatsoever, and quite frankly, won't be anything more than a speed bump as Donald Trump continues to mow through his agenda. All
right, we will continue to watch it all closely. Zerlina, Maxwell, and Hogan Gidley, thank you both for your time.
Thank you.